Right. Thank you so much for the introduction. That was amazing. I want to start by thanking the organizers. Obviously, hold on. Let's see if my clicker works, first of all. Right. So basically, I want to thank the organizers for having me. It's a pleasure to be back in Amsterdam, and it's a pleasure to be back at this conference. As Jeroen said, this is where I did my first ever public talk back in 2022. And I say it's kinda where it all started because it was in a different venue. Nothing crazy, just like 20 minutes away from here. And yeah, basically this is me speaking at the conference last time. And since then, in 2022, it feels like being here today closes a very nice cycle in these 2 years where I've been able to speak all over the world. And kind of all it took was to take that first step and for the organizers to kind of give me the opportunity to speak there for the first time. I don't know if it was good or not, the talk, but I feel like I've grown a bit over time. I'm a bit less nervous than I was 2 years ago, but I still get pretty nervous anyway. Didn't introduce myself. My name's Paul. I'm an indie developer and content creator based in Barcelona, in Spain. If you think that my accent is a bit weird, doesn't sound quite Spanish, you've got reasons to actually think that. I've lived in the UK for about 10 years, and not in the south where they speak the proper English. I live in the north of England for a while, so I've got a lot of Yorkshire sayings and Lancashire sayings. My fiance is from Scotland as well, so that kind of adds to the mix of accents and the weird things that I probably will say during the talk. As an indie developer, I work on 4 different apps. 2 of them I work on my own. One of them is called Create. It's a QR code editor and generator for the Mac. Another one is very, very new. It's called Fozzy. It's an app to save digital memories of your football tickets for when you go to stadiums and stuff. Basically an excuse for me to fuel an addiction of football and just going to stadiums and watching games. And then the other 2, I work, as Jeroen said, with my good friend Hide, who I met here in 2022. One of them is Now Playing, which is an iOS, Mac, Vision OS app that gives you basically data and facts about music. We also use Shazam Kit to basically recognize music and give you nice displays and information that you wouldn't get otherwise. And we also, this year, we started working on an App Store Connect client for macOS that we like to say that we are building the features that Apple forgot to build, basically. And it's fueled of our frustration with App Store Connect. We decided to make a native, fast experience. And talking about Helm, I don't know why I keep trying this clicker, it doesn't work. Talking about Helm, we recently reached a new milestone. We've got over 4,800 developers using the app now. And to celebrate this, I'm giving 50% off for 1 year. If you use that promo code, it's get your Helm on. And yeah, you just go to helmapp.com, download the app, and use the offer code. So yeah, just take a photo if you're interested. Sweet. And you might be wondering what the hell is that on the screen? What does it have to do with anything? Well, with our first profit with the app, we decided we were having drinks here in Amsterdam, actually. We were visiting with my partner. And we decided that because we both love football, we would like to do something cool for merchandising for Helm. And we decided to look for teams that we could actually sponsor with Helm and we could get on their t-shirt. He knew of this club that it's kind of like a match made in heaven. It's called AVV Swift, which is pretty nice. And it's the t-shirt that I'm wearing today with the sponsor on. If you don't believe us, you probably have reasons not to believe us. Why the hell would they do that? This is a photo we got from the team wearing the shirts, which is pretty nice. I am giving 1 shirt away. I've only got 1 with me. So the first person that comes to me after this talk and shows me that they have submitted a version of their app with Helm gets the t-shirt, basically. Yeah, let me tidy up my stuff. After the talk, don't come running at me. But yeah, find me after. I'll be around for a bit. Sweet. Aside from apps and indie development, I also create a lot of content online. So I've got a blog where I write weekly articles called paulpillet.dev. And I also have a newsletter that I ship every couple of weeks, which is about iOS CI/CD. My content has been primarily focused on tooling, automation, the build side of things in mobile. And that's what I spoke about here 2 years ago. And that's what I'm kind of like speaking about today here as well. This passion led to, also through conferences and through content, led me to meet the lovely people at Runway, which is a mobile release management platform that I'm collaborating with, doing freelancing for them at the moment as well. They've got a pretty cool platform. I get to write like a ton of articles for them on their blog, discussing mobile releases and why they're pretty bad in general, and ways to like get around it. And yeah, one conclusion that I've learned from these like past few years of working with big teams that handle mobile releases for a lot of users, and with pretty big teams and handling them at scale, is that mobile releases are really, really difficult, and there is honestly no denying that. They are extremely stressful, and you really need to get them right. And I'm sure I'm not the only person who felt like this whenever you have to like run a release, and when they tell you, oh, it's your turn this week, you're kind of like dreading it. It produced like a lot of anxiety for me to kind of like have to run a release and have to do all the regression testing, have to make sure that everything goes according to plan, and it was quite a lot of pressure. So I would usually like hide from it and not look forward to it. And I'm sure you're also familiar with the meme/truth in the software development community that you should not ever ship a release of an app or an update of an app on a Friday. It tends to be, the common conception is that it tends to be a very bad idea, and it usually fuels having to work very, very late on a Friday when you probably want to have some pints instead of submitting an app to App Store Connect. And it probably leads in some cases that you have to work weekends because something goes wrong with your release. But why is mobile releases, and what makes mobile releases so hard, actually? What's the reason why you really need to get them right? Well, the first thing is that you depend on external factors. One external factor is that every app that you ship to the App Store needs to go through an App Store review. On average, I pulled this data from Runway's dashboard for like the clients that they have and the apps that they have. They kind of collect some data and they build some nice dashboards that are public. On average, from the moment you submit a version, to the moment that you're able to ship it, it takes 14 hours, which is a very long time. We have definitely had worse than that. The first version of Helm was in review this was when we tweeted. We thought we were at the end of the tunnel. We spent 1.61% of 2024 in review, stuck in review, but it actually took a lot longer than that. We were in review for 6.5 weeks, I believe. So yeah, it took a very long time. Obviously, it's the first version. It's always harder when you get the first version of your app in the store. And we had to go back and forth with the review team. We eventually got it out, but it means that you don't have like a very quick reaction time. It can take a while until you ship a version of your app to the store. It's happened quite recently as well with macOS apps. We both, with Helm, and I've got my own macOS app, we exchanged messages recently saying that both our apps had been stuck in review for at least 12, 13 hours, which is quite a long time. Another cool thing that can happen with external factors is that your app gets rejected, or that there is something that they've noticed with your app. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's something new that you've added. It could be something you've added a long time ago, but they've realized now that it's got an issue. I don't react badly to rejections from the App Store Connect team, because I think they do a pretty good job usually of telling you things that are quite wrong. For example, I was kind of hesitant of my football app, whether there was copyrighted content and whether I could use certain content in screenshots. And they basically got back to me saying I couldn't. So I kind of saved some lawyer advice there, thanks to the App Store review team. They usually have a lot of reason, and you can basically go back and forth with them and explain why you've done things a certain way. But it can certainly delay you releasing your app. One cool thing that comes with rejections, I don't know if they do it anymore, but Revenue Cat used to give out socks to whoever tweeted them that your app had been rejected. So if they still do it, I would recommend just get some free socks. It's pretty cool. Another thing that makes app releases very, very complicated, and it kind of narrows your reaction time and your reaction power in case something goes wrong during your release, is this setting in the iPhone. So some people can actually turn off automatically app updates for all apps, basically. So that means if you ship an app that has a critical bug or has something completely wrong, then even if you react very quickly and you expedite a review and you get it out like within a couple of hours or 3 hours, it could be that a user has that broken version forever because they don't have automatic app updates. You could do other things. You could basically just do force upgrade screens, and I know a lot of companies do that to kill off like certain versions, but that's usually a bad like UX. And whenever I see, oh, there's a new version available of this app as a like an alert when I launch an app, it puts me off a bit. So yeah, these kind of things, there's workarounds, but as you can see, like it's quite hard to get things right. So it is normal that with this ecosystem, like we feel like this when it comes to do a release. And you could reach this conclusion, and I think it's a very fair conclusion that a lot of companies have reached, and it's that mobile releases can really be risky. Like if you get something wrong in a release, it could be like weeks until you actually are able to rectify it. If it's a free app or if it's a solo project that you do that doesn't generate a lot of revenue, then it's probably fine. Like you can experiment a lot. But if you work in a company that, I don't know, handles like millions and millions of euros, then you probably should get things right. And you can see like that's a lot of pressure on like the developers as well to get the releases right. So you could basically take this approach and say, let's just not ship anything on a Friday. Let's make sure like we start on a Monday maybe so that everyone's the whole week in the office and we make sure everything's right. And you could limit yourself that way. But I like to take things in a slightly different way. And I'm going to give you a few tips in this talk that might help you actually gain confidence in your release and so that you can feel that you can do riskless releases or less risky releases and ship absolutely anytime. So if you fancy shipping and your stakeholders are telling you they want to ship something and it's a Friday, then you might have the confidence to say, okay, I'll do it. Like I've got ways to kind of like roll back and rectify if I do. Awesome. So I'm going to go now. Got quite a lot of time, so I'm going to go at a decent pace. I'm going to monitor the time because there's 8 tips that I'm going to give you. So I might rush it a bit towards the end, but let's see how it goes. Number 1, if you know me and you've read any of my blogs, mostly I spend most of my life automating things. So my first advice, obviously, is automate as much as possible. It might seem like a waste of time at the beginning, but it's literally like this snowball effect. There will be one day where it will pay off, and you will eventually see those automations really really helping you and saving you some time and human error as well. So there is a lot that you can automate when it comes to app development or even like Swift development or open source library development. But the most common one is automating a release, right? That's the most common workflow, and it's probably the most critical process of your business because you need to get your app out to your users. So you need to make that like process as smooth as possible, as quick as possible, and as frictionless as you possibly can. So what I like to do for my releases is usually a flow like this. So you basically create a branch when you're going to do a release. So this, you would want to call it something like release / and the version that you want to release. And at this point, what you're doing is implicitly, you're creating a code freeze. So at that point, you're cutting the release, and you've got everything you want to ship, and you don't allow anyone else to put anything else on that release branch. So it gives you like a clean like testing slate, and only things that have been approved and are critical to that release can actually go into that branch. So once you've got the branch, you want to run some tests, do some Xcode like operations, and you want to archive the application. You want to compile it into a nice like package, whether it's a PKG for macOS or an IPA for iOS. Then you want to code sign it. This is usually one of the most painful parts of iOS development, code signing things. And then you want to upload it to App Store Connect. My suggestion is that you automate absolutely everything. If you're on a fixed cadence for your releases, you can automate the branch creation. But if you want to do it like you want to do feature-based releases, for example, where you only ship when you actually have things to ship, then automate all of this part. And it's very easy to kind of say this, but you might be thinking oh, how on earth do I actually automate all this stuff? Well, I'm going to show you examples, and there's going to be code that you can copy-paste. Don't worry about taking photos and stuff. I'll share the slides afterwards. This, in a single slide, is all you need to actually go from a branch that's got a release and the version number to actually submitting a version to App Store Connect. So the lane here, what it does is it sets up the CI, which means that it creates a keychain that doesn't need authentication. It syncs all of the certificates from App Store Connect. It downloads them on the machine. It increments the version and sets it to the one from your branch name. It authenticates with the App Store Connect API, bumps the build number as well. This is super important for macOS app. If you forget to bump the build number and it's smaller than the ones you've got in App Store Connect, then you will be greeted with a nice failure when you upload. So it takes care of everything for you. It even checks test flight for the latest build number, so you always ensure you're up to date. You build the app, you upload it to the App Store, and a nice bonus as well is that everything you've changed in the Xcode project, because you've changed the version number and the build number, will be committed to that branch so that everyone in your team will have access to that. So as you can see, I don't know how many lines that is, maybe 20 lines of code. There's a bit of Fastlane configuration that you have to do, but it really isn't that complicated. And this really needs to run somewhere, so you need to trigger it somehow. So I've got some code as well for running your releases with GitHub Actions. So whenever you push to a release branch with that pattern, this will run. It will install Ruby. It's super fast because it's all pre-cached thanks to an action by the Ruby team, and then it will run the Fastlane lane. So it really doesn't take a lot, and with this, you reduce all of the human error that you might have, all the things you might forget, and then you automate absolutely everything. All you have to think about, which is actually very nice, is creating the branch, and if something goes horribly wrong and you have to re-archive, then you literally make a commit with what you have to change, and everything happens behind the scenes. Another thing that can really improve your confidence with your releases is a comprehensive test suite. So if you've got a test suite and you've got a nice coverage doesn't always mean a good thing. You might have 100% coverage, but you might not have the right tests in place. But if you do, and you're testing your core business logic and the things that really make you money and the things that you're scared about breaking, then it will really, really increase your confidence. But there's a caveat with this, is that you actually need to run the tests. So they will only increase your confidence if you run these tests. So automate all the tests running. Don't have them on your machine and have it as a documentation on your release process. Oh, remember to run the tests. Do not do that. Automate the whole thing. These are some cool places where you can put your unit tests and UI test runs. One of them is to protect your development branch. So any PRs or any commits to the development branch should be thoroughly tested, should fail if you're breaking something in that development branch. Another one is before uploading to App Store Connect. So during a release, make sure you unit test, you UI test. And one cool thing that you can do is if you're doing regression testing manually, so if you've got a document to say, oh, click this button, make sure this works before you do a release, use UI tests and maybe use end-to-end tests to automate that whole process of clicking buttons, and it will save you a lot of time. I used to do the regression testing at a company, and I absolutely hated it. It was so repetitive, and I had to spend 3 hours kind of testing all the edge cases. So we eventually worked on automating that, and it took 10 minutes. And also nightly or scheduled workflows. If you've got things like end-to-end tests where you don't want to run them, maybe they take a long time to run, or you don't want to run them very regularly, you could do it at times where your team isn't working. So, for example, in the middle of the night. It gets a bit tricky if you've got the team in multiple time zones, but you can always find a place where you can block some CI time to run expensive tasks. And this is a very good motto to live by. If there is a manual task that causes friction in your team, automate it right away. spend some time, automate it, because it's slowing you down and it's causing you like some frustration. So make sure you get rid of that. And I actually did that this morning. We did an update. So Heath and I are collaborators on Antoine's SDK for the App Store Connect API. And we do the updates manually, basically, whenever a new Open API spec drops for the App Store Connect API, and we have to build all the code and create the PR manually. So this morning, I decided to kind of like automate that process. It really didn't take long. It took like 10, 15 minutes, and I'm sure it's gonna save us some time, because we might forget to do these updates in the future, and this will just do it automatically for us. Thank you. Second point, a bit controversial, but it doesn't mean what it says. Test your release pipeline. You might be feeling a bit like this. Like, I've already talked about tests. Please, no more tests. Like, I don't want to run any more tests. Well, I'm going to show you a use case whereby, like a previous job, we actually had this issue multiple times, and we managed to automate it and get like ahead of this issue before the release day. So imagine you've got an app target and you've got a modular code base, and your app target is importing a module called schedule. The app target is embedding and signing this module so that it's available in the final package. And then your app target also depends on module A, which is also importing the schedule module. So you can see there's already 2 imports. Module B is also depended on by the app target and also imports the schedule framework. It also embeds and signs this schedule framework. Does anyone have any idea what will happen? So you've got 3 copies of the same framework in the final app package. What does this mean? Well, you can actually archive your application, you can build your application, you can test it, you can run it on device, and you can archive it and sign it for the App Store, but only when you upload it to App Store Connect, you will get a failure, and it will tell you that you've basically got the CF bundle identifier collision. This means that you've got multiple bundles. The way to fix it is super, super simple. You just do not embed in the children module. You just embed at the app target, and then you're done. Now, while this is easy, it took me like quite a long time to realize that this was the case. I spent like a whole release day actually looking for solutions and trying to look for what was causing this. And even though it's a very easy fix, and it probably wouldn't take that long if I knew now, you don't want to be doing this on your release day. And you will usually only realize about these things, release workflows and uploading to App Store Connect for releases, usually happens once every maybe 2 weeks or every month. So you don't run this very often. I went on a mission to actually check if I could implement some form of like uploading that would run like a couple of times a week or something and verify, so that we would know before we did the release that there was something wrong, and we would have like some time to actually investigate any potential issues. This whole investigation, and I love going down rabbit holes actually. Oh yeah, I had a meme, I forgot about that. But yeah, that happens to us all the time. It ended up with a contribution to Fastlane. I added the deliver module, actually now has a verify-only flag. So deliver is what's used to upload a package and an app to App Store Connect. You can now do a dry run of that upload. So it basically will not, I'm not 100% sure how it works under the hood, because I used the AL tool under the hood. But basically, what it will do is it will upload, and then I think it will delete it immediately, but you will not get an artifact in App Store Connect. So it's basically a way to test that the upload, that your app is valid for uploading to App Store Connect. And you can use it in a very, very simple way. You could create like a nightly lane in Fastlane, archives your application, signs it for the App Store, and then you deliver it, but you don't actually see it in App Store Connect. So nothing gets delivered, doesn't get distributed anywhere. You don't need to, you don't need to actually worry about the build being there and cleaning up like afterwards. It's super, super handy. It's saved us, like it actually caught like a bunch of issues way before we actually had to do a release. And then again, well, that's the verify only flag. And then again, you have to run it somewhere. This is a cron job, which runs at midnight every night, and it just does the nightly lane. So very, very easy to implement. I've got kryptonites. One of them is regular expressions. The other one is cron expressions. They are honestly so hard to actually know what they mean. Use crontab guru. This content is not sponsored or anything, but they saved they saved me so many times that I felt like I should give them a shout out. I've got a full talk on this as well from the Mobile DevOps Summit organized by Bitrise from a couple of years ago. So if you want to go and watch a bit more about how you can catch things ahead of your release day, so you avoid a bit of like stress during your releases, the talk is there on YouTube for you to watch. Awesome. Number 3, adopt a release strategy. I wrote an article, and this kind of like inspired this section of the talk, about one of the most commonly asked things about releasing mobile applications, whether there's a such thing as releasing updates too fast or too slowly. Like, what's the perfect like rate of distributing releases and doing updates? During this article and actually writing about this, I found 2 pretty cool studies. But one thing that you need to know before diving deep into this is that the competition in the App Stores, both Android and iOS, is absolutely fierce. There's over 2 million iOS apps, and before this talk, I actually did a search for running apps. If you look at that, you can scroll through like pages and pages and still find like very, very similar apps. So it's incredibly hard to actually stand out. Even if you narrow it a bit, I'm training for a half marathon at the moment. Imagine how hard it is to find an app that works well through like lists and lists of apps. So it's really, really hard to actually penetrate the market, and you really need to get things right. So I started doing some research into this, like what correlation does releasing your mobile application have with the success of your app? So there was a study conducted in 2019 about like time-based release strategies. So these are basically releases that happen on a specific cadence. So they happen like every so often. And it basically showed that users preferred apps that were updated fairly recently because it gave them like the sense that developers are still like maintaining it. So it's not like 1 year ago that the developers like shipped an update. But they were annoyed by frequent updates as well. So they were likely, if there was like a lot of frequent updates, they were likely to delete the app. I started to dig a bit deeper into what this actually meant and see if I could find any other studies. And I found a study conducted by researchers at Peking University in 2018. It's about the Android mobile app store, about the Play Store, but it kind of like probably has very good correlations with the iOS app stores. He basically said that if your app is already loved by users, it's got good reviews, and you're maintaining quality, then you will really, really benefit from frequent updates. However, if it's the other way around and you're struggling with your customer rating, you're not providing a lot of quality, frequent updates will actually hurt you even more. So it will result in more bad reviews. So sometimes you actually try and compensate all those bad reviews by releasing very, very often and trying to provide like more features and more quality when it's actually harming your application. What these 2 studies actually meant is that the silver bullet of release frequency is that quality is way more important than quantity. And the reason why this is the case is because there's a lot of competition. And if you do a release, the mobile ecosystem is extremely unforgiving. It's not as unforgiving, sorry. It's not as easy as just refreshing a website. You actually have to go away, install an update of your app to kind of get a bug fix. So you need to really make sure that you get things right during your release. So my approach usually is to, and what I've implemented in certain teams, is to use release trains. So release trains, they basically work in the same way as a train would in a station. So a train has set times to arrive and leave, and they would come and leave regardless of the passengers. In your case, the train is the mobile release, the passengers are the features. So no matter what you've done in like those 2 weeks or that week, depends on what you decide as your cadence, your release will go out. Obviously, I said quality is way more important than frequency, so make sure you ask your team and you get feedback from them and you iterate and you try different periods so that you always allow like ample time for beta testing and QA. That's super, super important. So if you're a team of 2 and you don't have like any QA or anything, maybe once like every 3 weeks or every month makes a lot of sense. If you're a massive team and you've got like QA testers and all that kind of people, then you can probably ship like every week. So really take that into consideration and remember that quality matters way more than quantity when it comes to mobile releases. If you use release trains, you basically unlock a number of benefits. So you reduce the risk because you're shipping less stuff on every release. You increase predictability because everyone in your team, stakeholders, product managers, VPs, engineers, know when these releases are actually going to go out. So you can plan like around them. And you get faster feedback as well. You're shipping a lot more often, so you can ask like for people's ratings and stuff a lot more frequently. I wrote a small article as well about how to build the perfect mobile release train. I'll give you a big spoiler. It depends. It really depends. There's not like one thing that like fits every single team. You need to iterate. You need to speak to your engineers, and you need to do a ton of that kind of stuff. Awesome. Tip number 4. I think we're doing OK for time. So tip number 4 is use feature toggles. So feature toggles, remote configuration, feature flags, however you call them, they're settings that are configurable remotely and that your app basically fetches at runtime. So that basically if an incident happens in production, if something goes wrong that's critical with a specific feature, you can literally just turn it off. One good example, you can actually go very granular depending on the service. You can even launch in like specific cities. I work for a food delivery company in the courier app, and they basically had a feature flagging system that was super smart, and you could basically launch in specific cities where you had less traffic to kind of do a rollout in that sense. It was pretty cool, and you can do stuff like that. Some code that uses feature toggles might look a bit like this. If you do a big refactor, something that you think is risky, put it behind a feature toggle. If you're a big team and you're a big company and you're making, I don't know, imagine this is the code to do payments and transactions. You don't want to break that. So if you do a refactor, make sure you keep the legacy stuff and you put the new stuff behind a feature toggle. So if something goes horribly wrong, literally just turn it off and it will go back to working as normal. I'm not going to endorse or recommend any feature flag services because there's a ton of them. There's an article here about the 8 best free and open source feature flag services. But just do some research and find what's best for your team. Awesome. Observe and monitor. This is super, super important. You can only find out that something has gone wrong or good in production if you actually know what's happening with your users and how are they using your app. So to quickly react to an incident, you actually need to know that there's one happening. There's a bunch of metrics that I would recommend you collect. If you only want to collect one, collect crash reports and performance reports. It's probably like the most important thing that you could collect. You could do it directly in Xcode, but I would recommend you look into some services and some SDKs that help you track these issues and these performance metrics, and actually are able to give you some more automations and some more feedback than you just having to go and check manually on Xcode. For example, if you use Sentry or if you use other platforms, you can get Slack messages for whenever there's an alert and whenever a new error has appeared in your code base. Analytics. Not all issues in your app are crashes or errors. Make sure that you know what your metrics are and what your baselines are. Define what your key metrics are for your team and for your app, and make sure you monitor them over time. If you see a sudden drop, then you probably messed up something in the logic, or you've done something that's regressing a lot of users' performance. Another thing is customer satisfaction. Make sure you monitor that during a release so that you know what the user sentiment is. In the delivery app, food delivery app that I worked on in the past, we were the courier app, because it was their jobs, as soon as we got something wrong, we were flooded with customer feedback saying, this is not working, please fix it, because their jobs depended on the app. So make sure you keep an eye on that. Make sure you automate as well. You get notifications on Slack, maybe you get notifications on your emails, but make sure you set up a service that does that. We've built a small plug moment here. we've built a customer reviews section in Helm that translates the whole like comments and everything and the reviews into your language of choice. And you can reply and save templates for replying there as well if you want to contact your users. We've also used AI to summarize the sentiment of your app with those reviews, so it gives you like a glanceable summary of what your users are saying about specific versions of your app. User feedback, super important as well. Request user feedback from your app, and make sure, you make it available from a menu in your app somehow, so they can get in touch about requesting bugs and maybe things that you don't see in analytics. I know Antoine talked about this yesterday. Diagnostics, fantastic. We use it in Helm, and it can help you like enrich your user feedback basically. So you can ask them to provide diagnostics together with the user feedback that they provide, and it will basically give you an opportunity to answer a lot of questions that you might have, such as operating system, what version of the app they were, what country, like a ton of different things. This is integrated into your workflow. This is how we do it in Helm. You can send diagnostics, and basically you can see sessions and logs that you collect from your apps. And the user has to agree to send you this, so it's all privacy friendly as well. Another one, CI/CD velocity metrics. This is usually forgotten about, but make sure your builds aren't getting worse with time. It's not getting slower. Maybe the flakiness of your tests. Make sure you monitor those things, because that's an important part of the release process too. If your CI/CD service of choice doesn't give you a nice dashboard and with velocity metrics, I've got a full talk about how you can use webhooks and tools to actually create your own dashboard using only Swift. So make sure you check that out if you don't have that feature available to you. Awesome, we're getting there. How's everyone feeling? Are you okay? Yeah, awesome. Something that seems very obvious, but still a lot of people miss, is do not release to all users at once. So when you've got to do a release, do it in a phased release. So App Store Connect allows you, and obviously Helm as well, allows you to do phased releases. So you can tick this thing and say that you want to release updates over a 7-day period. This will basically start on a very slow percentage of users over time, and it will grow exponentially as your release goes on. What's very good about this is that you can actually stop the release at any time. So if you start getting bad customer feedback, you see ratings going down, you see a ton of crashes, you literally just press that pause button and you're done. Like, you don't release to any more users. So you can minimize the impact. Now, take it to the next level if you want, and you can basically make an automation that pauses your releases automatically. So if you use a service for crash reporting, for example, like Sentry, they usually have a thing called webhooks, which are whenever an action happens on a website, they will make a post request to a specific URL that you provide them. So if you've got Sentry sending you a notification to a Lambda that you've written and you've deployed, maybe in Swift as well, you can basically talk to the App Store Connect API and pause a release. As I've been doing throughout the whole talk, I am going to give you a code snippet for this as well. This is what a Lambda looks like using the AWS Lambda runtime. You can see there's some body. This is where you would basically decide, based on whatever webhook you're receiving, what to do, like if you want to pause the release or not, depending on the issue and alert you're receiving. And then what you would do with the App Store Connect API is you would first get the latest live version of your app that's currently being rolled out. You check if there's a phase release, and if there is a phase release, you just make another network request to stop that release and put it on pause. You could also make it like send you an email to say, okay, this is happening, like make sure you stop the release so that it's not like automatic if you want a bit more like control over it. But I would recommend doing something like this. It's super handy. And then what it means is you gain confidence that, okay, I'm going to ship this, but if something goes wrong, it will stop anyway. So it doesn't really matter. And yeah, hands-free. This is what I like to do the most. Cool. One more thing that I want to say is move risky logic to the server. So this can be things that are out of your control and fail very often, and things that are core to your business, and the things that I always like to say, like very plain, the things that actually make you money, essentially. Make sure you have quick control over that, and you can actually modify certain things. Why move it to the server? Because you can literally deploy to a lot of, to the whole world within just seconds, rather than having to wait for a release. We recently had an issue where the certain endpoints of the App Store Connect API started returning strange data, so they were starting to return very old versions. We quickly found a workaround. This was an issue with the App Store Connect itself, it was broken as well. We found a workaround. We used another endpoint. We hacked around it, and then we expedited a review. If you didn't know, this is super, super handy. It's a great tool to have in your toolbox. If you've got a critical bug fix or an event-related app update, you can expedite the release. But it does say there that there's on a limited basis, and we cannot guarantee that every request will be expedited. So you can try, and they might review it quickly. That's what happened to us with Helm and this release. But be careful, do not do it too often, and do it for the right reasons, because it might result on Apple ignoring all of your requests going forward if you break the rules, essentially. But it's still not ideal. It could still be 4 hours, 5 hours until you actually release your update. Worst case scenario, 14 hours, which is kind of the average in review. So yeah, my recommendation is try and move logic that fails often to the server. And then you can basically ship bug fixes worldwide for all your versions of your app within seconds. The way you would do it, if you build a Swift backend and you've got your app with your logic and models, you move the models into a Swift package, and then you make your app use this Swift package. You move the risky logic that you've got to another Swift package, which could be something like a Lambda in Swift. And then you can use both models, your app and your backend can use the same models, and then basically you can make your app just request the logic from the backend instead of doing it from the app itself. This will give you a lot more freedom, and you will basically gain a lot of confidence to do your releases in a risky-less way. If you're interested in server-side Swift, it's a shame Tim had to go, but he made this side where you can basically learn a ton, and there's a ton of resources that you can get to get started with Swift on the server. We're running a bit short on time, but I'm going to do the last tip, which is rolling back to a stable version immediately. And this is getting closer to other ecosystems like web and backend, which are amazing in this case. If you've got a faulty version of your app released to production, what you usually do is you look through your commits, find the culprit one, and then you redeploy the one before that, which was stable. So this is what it would look like on a backend or web ecosystem. You would have 1.0.0, you release 1.0.1, which is faulty, and then you go back in your commits, and magically it goes poof, and it disappears from your website. You just need to do a refresh within seconds, and then your version is basically this stable version. Unfortunately, if you want to do something like this, it's extremely complicated in mobile ecosystems. Because once you've got an update of your app out, maybe you've posted at a very low rollout, but it's there forever. You can't really take it back. You can't delete the version in App Store Connect, and you can't really get it back. So what you can do instead is when you create a specific release, you can basically also submit another version, so another build and another version, with the last stable build of your app. So the way you do this is, for example, if I was shipping 1.0.0, I think that this is a mistake, but if I was shipping 1.0.0, I would ship 1.0.1 as well, and these two builds would be identical, but they would have different versions, and I would submit them both for review. That means that if 1.0.0 goes wrong at any point, I've got another version that's the last stable version before 1.0.0, and I can just release it, and it's technically kind of like a rollback that's ready for you to release to all users. Now, doing this, it's not as easy as just grabbing the build and putting it in another version. You have to go into the build. You need to access to the build itself. Once you upload something to App Store Connect, you lose access to that file, essentially. So either you keep it yourself or in a CI/CD service, but you will not be able to download it from App Store Connect, which is, it's a bit annoying. Then with this build, you have to modify it. So you need to change the build number and the version number to the new one. Because there's some protection and builds are signed, if you've modified something, the signature changes. And to prevent tampering, this is like a security issue. App Store Connect will reject your build because it's been modified and it's been tampered with. So you have to sign it again, everyone's favorite thing to do. and then you upload it, and you've got like a different version of your app with the last stable. So it's there. The idea is that you never have to ship this app, this version. That's like the rollback version. But if things go wrong, you've got always like the fail-safe of being able to release that. I honestly wish I had come up with this idea myself. I didn't. This is a feature that Runway built called rollbacks, which basically, when you create a version, they will ask you if you want to roll back with the last stable version. And whenever you submit a version, it will submit another one in parallel with the one prior, which is a pretty handy feature. It's very smart, and it's as close, I think, as we'll ever get to fully rollbacks like other ecosystems. So hopefully, with everything that we've learned today, with all of that stuff that I've shown, you have gained a bit of like confidence in your releases, and you feel like if you implement some of these, you feel more empowered to kind of like ship your apps on a Friday or any time that you want. Thank you so much for listening. You can find me online on that QR code. I've got like a ton of social media and stuff you can follow me on, or just messaging me if you've got any questions. And I'm running a workshop on CI/CD for iOS. I think it's in a couple of weeks, either next week or in a couple of weeks. And there's some tickets still available. So if you want to join a workshop talking about CI/CD in great detail, I would recommend you check that out. But yeah, thank you so much for listening.